Have you guys thought about that with the Civil War at all?
Yeah, you mean after the end of the occupation of the South, I say a reversion to the old political arrangements
after the failure of the North to continue their occupation of the South.
Careful. We're this is an away game.
Like on the cutting edge of like academic the academic left, they're doing this new thing with Reconstruction, where they say that Reconstruction failed because they're like, you know, Reconstruction ended, it failed because of like basically kind of guerrilla war type things in the South, which is not wrong. That's not incorrect. But I mean, they're basically doing this just to have this sort of specific emotional thing about like it's because we didn't kill all the Klan guys and stuff like that.
Let's go ahead.
But and I always like to I'm trying to like cheer this on in a way of like, good, okay, put that in the history book. Tell them that you tried to occupy the South, and groups like the Klan and all these sort of veteran groups and stuff ended it. But they don't want to do that either. But it's very fun. But the more interesting thing about it is like, it's clear that like we're not even talking about history anymore. We're just talking about like what is the best movie version to give to children to give them the right emotional effect from history class. It is so bizarre.
Well, let's frame this in terms of the home cooking, right? This is so what happened after the Civil War ended? You had a military occupation of a third of the country of the South. And what was the goal? The goal for Republicans was let us go sweep in here and replace all of the existing relationships between people, not just government or military, whatever, but like commercial, social. Let's change all of these paid. We're going to give all these clients new patrons, and more importantly, we're going to be the only available patron for this new group that we've created, freedmen. It's like we're going to take control over all these old relationships, and you know you're going to do it at bayonet point. You're going to do some of it with ballots. You're going to do it with expanded federal bureaucracy, like we've noted before on our podcast. You know, the Justice Department didn't exist before Reconstruction. It was explicitly created for the purposes of Reconstruction to take people away from the South to try them on federal charges in the North or in Washington, D.C. But either way, it was working in the sense that there were several states where they, like, if you look at the 1872 election, a lot of southern states couldn't vote because they were still occupied under military governments. You had Republican governments that had been set up by the military that still existed with fusion tickets, and maybe there was hanky-panky at the ballot box or whatever. But the important thing is the idea was we're going to replace what used to be a democratic patronage system, and it was explicitly a patronage spoil system. This is like they didn't even deny it back then, and we're going to make this our own. The problem with this always is like the enemy, like in warfare, the enemy has a vote, right? And you can't set up those networks. This is why, like, if you want to say tomorrow we're going to go fix Mexico, we're going to set up a good government in Mexico, but you can't do that because the cartels just F and kill your people. They'll kill people in the voting lines. They'll kill people who are trying to give out money. They'll steal it. They'll set up their own not literally underground, but underground networks, and you can't do anything about that unless you have military supremacy. Like, that's the real story of Reconstruction. They lost the ability to operate in the South because there were enough people who didn't like what they were doing that it would be physically dangerous to be a Republican in a lot of these places. And when we're all around the same age, we're a little bit older than you, but when we learned this in the history books, it was like, well, what happened was there was Reconstruction, but it didn't really work out. And the North didn't have the political will, and the 1876 election happened, so they just kind of gave up on it. But like, that's not true. That's never true. Nobody ever just gives up on taking complete political power. You run into a hard limit of how far you can expand. And like, And ironically, usually when you hit that limit and then your empire, your whatever, has to collapse back into a